So this is going to be part 2, and I will be addressing the wage gap in this particular video. Now, for those of you who don't know what the wage gap is, it is a part of feminist theory which states that a woman gets paid less than men do on average for the same amount of work, usually due to the discrimination against women in the workplace, which of course is a result of the patriarchal system. Now, most of my detractors who have seen previous videos of mine will understand that I don't agree with a lot of what feminism says, and will probably automatically assume that I think that the wage gap is a myth, that I think that, okay, this is story time over, end of discussion, comments, ratings disabled, and skedaddle, right? But, I think that this is a chance for a little bit more of an in-depth conversation as to why I think the wage gap is a myth. But let's get one thing out of the way first. Whether or not a wage gap actually exists where I live, where you live, wherever anyone lives, I believe it's only fair to pay a woman what a man earns as long as they are doing an equivalent amount of work. With that out of the way, I don't think that the wage gap is quite as big or as influential, if it exists at all, as feminists claim it does. Especially not in first world countries like Canada and America. True, on average, a man does earn a little more than a woman, but this is again taken from the average salaries of men and women, and not really looking further than that. Men also tend to favor occupations which require longer commitment, whereas women tend to favor occupations that are a lot more flexible to fit in family life. Let's say you were looking at this from an employer's point of view. You own a company, and you are looking to hire either a man or a woman who are about 25 years old. Both of them have the exact same education, both of them have the exact same qualifications, everything exactly the same except for the fact that one's a man, one's a woman. Now, who would you rather hire? For me, I would rather hire the man in this instance. Am I sexist? Does that mean that Truth of the People, you are a horribly misogynistic bastard? Strictly using logic, the man in this instance would more likely devote more to the career than the woman, just by life choices. Assuming both the man and the woman were in a relationship, men tend to devote more to their careers than women do at that time because women have to go through the childbirthing years, and most women tend to have kids at around like late 20s, early 30s. Of course, this is not always set in stone. Men could take a more active role in the family, and women may have absolutely no interest in starting a family and instead want to further their career. But the important thing to recognize is employers will discriminate no matter what you do because their interest is for the better of the company. And it may be true that not all women have an interest in starting a family or having kids. It may be true that all men may not be people who devote 100% to their jobs, but employers will look for general trends. And right now, the general trend is that, statistically speaking, men tend to spend more time at their jobs than women do. Now, if that seems unfair to you feminists, well, guess what? This is capitalism. Women generally cost more than men. This is nothing new. This is not some groundbreaking sexist revelation I'm making. This is reality. And if that, again, is the feminist point of contention, that the capitalist system is discriminating against women because of the fact that they are in their childbirthing years and could cost the company more than a man of the same age, well, I'm sorry. The auto industry does the same thing to men by raping us in the ass with insurance premiums, so guess what? Capitalism swings both ways. It's not a fair system, and it never claims to be. Now, as I've mentioned before, men tend to spend more time at their jobs than women do, partly because women generally have a lot of other obligations, like taking care of family. And this could be a point of contention by feminists when they say men aren't taking enough of an active role in taking care of the family, while women are essentially constrained from their jobs because they are forced to take an active role in helping the family because the man is not there to do them. Well, that's not really my place to say what couples should do in the privacy of their own home, okay? And I don't think that's anyone's place to tell what two people should or should not do. I hear it said often that women are not CEOs, or like there are very few women CEOs, very few women who are at the highest level of politics. And feminists everywhere are riling up and saying, why don't we have equal representation in Senate or the House of Commons or whatnot? Well, here's the reality. A lot of women don't go into these fields, as I've mentioned before. They make different life choices, and a lot of these things, like politics, require long-term commitment, which simply cannot be had if you spend a lot of time with your family. And again, just because you don't see 50% of the House of Commons being women does not mean that there is inherent discrimination in Canadian politics. We don't need more women in the House of Commons. We don't need more women as CEOs. We don't need more women as engineers. We need the best people, the most qualified people to be the top of the top. I don't care if they're men or women or transgendered, whatever. I really don't care. As long as they are qualified and I can trust them to do their damn job, I really don't care. Besides, I have honestly never heard a feminist complain that there are not enough women in those extremely low-paying, hazardous jobs like dealing with toxic waste or being a trucker or things like that. There may be certain employers that really do discriminate against women in certain fields, but I honestly think that is the minority of cases, and I don't think that it is enough to say that it constitutes a wage gap. I don't think that the minority of cases here is enough to say that women are discriminated against by this social system constructed and dominated entirely by men to subjugate women. Still don't believe me? Then I have 3 questions to ask. And the first one is, if there really was a wage gap or a glass ceiling, why do companies these days pander so much to women and feminists? Like, they have very strict anti-discrimination and anti-harassment policies. They have booths at conventions specifically catered to try and lure women in to these career paths. It seems that we're not trying to discriminate against women. We're doing the exact opposite. And secondly, if companies really were trying to discriminate against women in the form of the wage gap or the glass ceiling, why is it that no smart employer has caught on to the fact that women would be willing to do the exact same amount of work that a man would be doing for 25% less pay, supposedly? And finally, what employer would be dumb enough these days to discriminate against a woman when they could have a lawsuit up their ass? Especially with all these feminist groups sneaking around and willing to file even the most frivolous lawsuits for things like quote-unquote sexist discrimination. So until I get an adequate answer for all 3 of those questions, especially the last one, I'm going to have to call bullshit. I don't see that there is a wage gap in the majority of workplaces here in North America that specifically discriminates against women. And furthermore, I don't think that companies would be dumb enough to try that thing, especially if they are a large company. They wouldn't be dumb enough to discriminate against women, because even the rumor of a lawsuit based on sexual discrimination could bankrupt a company, even if the company won the case. So I don't think that there really is a wage gap or a glass ceiling. and until I see solid evidence that suggests the contrary, I remain adamant in my position. May the truth always be heard.